Call to order the Kennedale City Council regular meeting. Did you see me jump? I scared myself. January 16th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. We are at City Hall Council Chambers located at 405 Municipal Drive. Members of the public can join us in person or access a live feed at www.cityofkennedale.com/videos. However, the virtual option does not allow for public comment. To address the Kennedale City Council regarding an agenda item, please submit a request to speak form before the meeting begins. Speakers, you'll be allotted 3 minutes. Limit your comments to the subject indicated on the form and address the Kennedale City Council as a whole rather than individual members. Pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, the Kennedale City Council reserves the right to adjourn into executive session at any time during the meeting to seek legal advice from the city attorney on any item posted on the agenda. Madam Secretary, can I get a roll call?
Councilman David Glover.
Here.
Councilmember Kenneth Michaels.
Here.
Councilmember Bryant Griffith.
Present.
Councilmember Jeff Navarez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And we're going to have our invocation and pledges, and Mayor Pro Tem, if you'll lead our pledges. And we have a special guest tonight for our invocation, Pastor Drost. So do you want to do the pledges first? We'll do the prayer first. Okay, so Pastor Drost, if you'll come up, just make sure the green microphone is on. But I'd ask everybody to stand, please.
Heavenly Father, giver and sustainer of life, we honor you today and acknowledge your sovereignty and eternal rule. Thank you for the grace that has sustained us this far. The city of Kennedale is not hidden from your sight, nor is every person, office, and family represented in this city and in this room. You see far beyond what we can see. Your understanding surpasses our own. That's why we bow down before you, asking for your blessing over this city and this meeting. Lord, may your will be done. May your purposes be fulfilled in and through every man and woman on this council. Guide the plans, the thoughts, and ideas that are in your people's heart, that every decision made would be pleasing to you and for the benefit of the families, businesses, and authorities of this city. Guide us a step closer to your greater plan. Cast your light over our hearts and minds and deliver us from any fear and all anxiety. Extend your wings of protection over your city, Lord, and provide the resources that are needed. Thank you that you hear us. In the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you again for the prayer. And Pastor Drost is with Iglesia Our Church, located at Dick Price and North Road. So thank you so much for being here tonight and your beautiful prayer. We'll start out with, are we ready for I was going to move the pinning early. We're not pinning?
Yes.
Oh. Chief Brown, are we prepared to do the promotional ceremony for the firefighters now, or do we want to wait on that?
We could wait about 2 minutes. Look at get recognized.
Okay, so what we have next is the work session, so it'll be the rate, probably one of the longer pieces of our night. Are you okay with that? Okay. And do we have anyone that's here to speak tonight? Nope. All right, then we'll just move right into our work session. And the only item on our work session is a presentation from Wilden Financial Services on the 2024 Water and Wastewater Rate Study. Director Horton, if you want to give us an update as to where we are now and present them.
Yeah, so water rate study, to just give some history, it's part of our bond package, part of the sewer improvements that we have. And as we were going through the bond, we determined that it was a good time to do a water rate study to just ensure that our fund would support the debt. And here tonight is Jason from Wildan Financial Services that'll give his presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. My name is Jason Gray. I'm a Vice President with Wildan Financial Services. We are a financial services provider in the municipal marketplace. We do water and sewer rate studies as well as a variety of other kinds of municipal financial work all across the country. We're based in Plano, and we do about 40 to 50 of these water and sewer rate studies a year. We've done over 350 in the state of Texas over the past several years, and we are, doing this all day, every day, basically. And so I've been working with Wildan Financial now for about 4 years. I've got 25 years in the municipal business. I'm a former city manager of Salina and McKinney and have been consulting now for 10 years total. So again, name is Jason Gray. I'm based in Plano, and we've got some preliminary results here for you for the water and sewer rate study. Next slide. Go ahead, the next slide there. So first off is just some overall trends that we see within water and sewer across the country. And I failed to mention, not only do we do this in Texas, but we've got about 35 clients in Arizona as well. And then we've also got offices in Orlando, Florida, and Temecula, California. And those offices have their own clients across the Southeast as well as the Southwest. Go ahead, next. That's right. Actually, if you could go up one slide, I'm sorry. Right here, there we go. So average utility rates have been increasing at a pace of about 5 to 6% per year. We're seeing that trend not only continue, but in some cases increase in pace. The American Water Works Association, or AWWA, which is the national association that covers a wide variety of different operational as well as financial issues in the water business, essentially, expects that water and wastewater rates will triple over the next 15 years on average. That is due to a variety of different factors, not the least of which is we have essentially the same amount of water available. We have more people to make it available to. So that is one aspect. The cost of construction on both sides of the utility, both the water and the wastewater, but particularly the wastewater side, has gone up almost immeasurably, really, in the past 10 to 15 years. Things that the cost of doing a variety of different things within the treatment process, lines, elevated storage tanks, all of those things have gone up almost 10 times in the past 15 years. So just to kind of get an idea on a major cost factor is capital improvements, which is no different here than anywhere else. And those costs have outstripped inflation pretty considerably, even at the high inflation rates that we've seen recently. Rate adjustments are primarily, and I would say it's even heightened here in Kennedale, but primarily due to reasons beyond your direct control. Obviously, this is a business, right? And the water that gets produced and eventually sold to your customers, your ratepayers, your citizens, has a cost to produce. And unlike the property tax rate that has an offsetting variable of, generally speaking, an increasing property value, so you can oftentimes keep a property tax rate constant, water and sewer rates aren't that way. People generally use about the same amount of water this year as they did last year. And so the only way to recover additional revenue that keep up with inflation and the new projects that you have is to do that through increasing the rate that will be then applied to essentially, close to the same amount of water and generate some additional revenue. We have a rate comparison for you here where we went out and looked at a variety of different communities that, are comparable in some way, shape, and form with Kennedale. We always try to make sure that we make it clear that rate comparisons are important. And we know that people have experiences in different communities about how much they paid for water and sewer services, those kinds of things. But keep in mind that 30 to 40% of utilities charge rates that don't fully cover their costs. Sometimes that's explicit, and they've got a general fund transfer. It just came from a client earlier today that's doing a general fund transfer into the utility fund. So they're using property tax dollars to help fund water and sewer services. That's legal, it's fine. It's not a best practice because what you're doing then is blending those two funds in ways that are not necessarily intended. Sometimes it's not quite as explicit as that and is in the sense of you've got capital improvement projects that really do need to be done and you just keep deferring them getting done. If you can keep deferring the cost of those things, then maybe you can keep your rates a little bit lower, but in reality, those rates are not actually covering the full cost of doing the business. Next slide. So that's sort of the broad view. Here locally, you've not adjusted your water and wastewater rates since 2018. And so that is obviously a pretty good ways back. Arlington Water, as I'm sure that you know, provides the water supply, at least most of the water supply right now, and will increase that percentage over time. Wastewater treatment, customer billing, water and wastewater operations. And so that's one of the reasons why I say, generally speaking, for the citizens that may be listening tonight, for their benefit, of when I say that a lot of times the things that are driving costs are outside of your control, that is even more so true here when you've got an operator that you're working with and they're providing, as I understand, good service and all those sorts of things, but they've also got a cost that they need to cover and they can increase their prices in negotiation with you. And there's limited alternatives that you have. So that's just one other aspect here locally that drives the rate plan a little bit differently than how it does in many cities. Combination of several factors are resulting right now in the need to review the long-term rate plan. You've got operating expenses that continue to increase. The water and sewer utilities are not immune to the effects of inflation that the general economy has seen. Fort Worth charges increasing, Arlington charges increasing, and the need to fund the capital improvements through the debt issuance that you have recently done through rates. So all of those factors combined, haven't raised rates in quite a while. You've got increasing costs on both operations and increasing costs on the capital side. All of those things are putting pressure on the existing rates. Next slide. I won't go through every number on this. This is your current water rate schedule. Essentially, you've got a base rate that's charged based on the size of the meter. Your most common residential meter is a 3/4 inch meter. That's got a $20 base rate. You got a senior and disabled residential discount that takes $750 off of the base rate. Commercial and industrial pay a little bit higher base rate, which is very common, $26. And the multifamily residential and commercial also has a base rate of $20 for those smaller meters. As you get larger in the meter sizes, the base rate goes up, which again is very common. That is simply because there's a significantly larger amount of water that can flow through a larger meter. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as we move through the presentation here. And then on the volume side, you've got what we call an inverted block rate. And all that means is that the more water that you use, the more you pay for it. And you've got a first base rate of 0 to 5,000 gallons at $275. That jumps up to $536 between 5 and 20,000 gallons. 20 to 50, actually anything over on the residential, anything over 20,000 gallons on residential is at $6.70. And then you'll notice on the commercial industrial, they've got another tier at over 50,000 gallons at $8.38. The idea behind an inverted block rate is, I'm sure you probably understand, is that what you're attempting to do is make people think about how they're using the water. And it discourages wasting water, particularly in outdoor irrigation and those sorts of things. As that price point becomes higher, the more water that gets used. Next slide. Current wastewater rates are similar in the sense that they've got a base rate and a volume charge, but there is no inverted block rate on the volume charge for wastewater, and that is simply because you're not trying to drive the same kind of conservation behavior. And so your volume is charged right now on the residential side at $2.80 a gallon. It's $2.90 a gallon, I think. Yeah, $2.90 a thousand gallons. And you do have a winter average for residential, which is, again, very common in how you set rates. The idea behind the winter average, of course, is that those are months in which outdoor irrigation is likely not occurring, and so all of the water use during the winter months is likely going into the sewer system, because you don't, like everybody else, you don't have sewer meters. You can't actually meter how much sewer goes into the system from any given house. So you have to approximate it based on how much water they're using in the months when they're not using irrigation on their lawn. So as I mentioned, we do a comparison for all of our clients, and you can see here that you're about middle of the pack. And I'll also say that these rates, when we began looking at this a couple of months ago, these are from October. Some of these communities, I think, have likely adjusted their rates. This is the time of year when a lot of communities are doing that. Right now, for a 10,000, this is for a residential customer, using 10,000 gallons of water and 5,000 gallons of wastewater based on that winter averaging, which is a pretty typical customer profile for Kennedale. You can see here right now that that customer would pay just a little over $105 combined between water and wastewater. The state average is at $116. And you can look here and see that places like Cedar Hill at $130 are considerably higher. North Richland Hills, Cleburne, we're actually doing the same kind of study for Cleburne right now. We know that they're going to be raising their rates as well. And you can see here you're about level with the Colony, slightly lower than Keller, Euless, Hearst, and a little bit higher than Bedford, Mansfield, Fort Worth, Arlington, and Coppell. Again, keep in mind that while those rates may be higher or lower, there are different dynamics at play at every one of these utilities and the way that they use these funds and potentially transfer in, transfer out, all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. So it doesn't necessarily mean, like in this case, that Cedar Hills operations at $130 for the same type of uses as Coppell would charge $79. It doesn't mean that they're 70% less efficient. They may have much higher level of capital improvement projects. They may be transferring money back into the general fund, and Coppell may not be doing those things, or they may actually be supporting some of their utility fund operations with property tax dollars as well. I don't know that to be the case. I'm just saying those are the kinds of things that are at play whenever you do a comparison like this. Next slide. All right, moving in. Next slide. All right, again, I won't go through an excruciating detail on this, but we start with looking at your existing customers. You've got a little over 3,000 water customers right now and just under 3,000 wastewater customers. Sometimes people ask, well, how is it that we have fewer wastewater customers than water? Sometimes that is simply because you've got septic systems existing, and so they treat their sewage on site. In other cases, you may have multiple water meters for a single wastewater account in a strip center, those kinds of things as well. So totally normal and common to see a little bit higher water meter number than wastewater accounts. Next slide. We're forecasting based on communication with your staff extensively about the growth that's happening here within the community. We're forecasting strictly at 100 new accounts for both water and wastewater per year as we move out. And so we've got a 10-year long-term forecast here. We're focusing on the rate side just within the first 5 years, but we'd like to take a look at 10 years to get an idea of where the utility is going financially. So 100 new accounts a year, we recognize that that's not going to be exactly 100 new accounts per year. It's going to go up and down a little bit, but on average over the next 10 years, you'd be adding about 1,000 accounts on both the water and the wastewater side. Next slide. So the way that your usage stacks up right now is that about 80% of the volume use of 416 million gallons is on the residential side. And you can see here that based on this, commercial is about 9%, multi-residential is up 4%, institutional at 3%, industrial 2%, construction meters, which are the fire hydrant meters, just 1%. and some various other categories there with relatively low usage. One of the important things to recognize about this is that there really is, that while there are 1,000 different ways to structure rates, when you've got 80% residential use, there is no way to structure rates that's going to generate any reasonable amount of additional revenue that doesn't affect residential customers. That's an unfortunate fact of having a large residential customer base, is that the rate plan must impact them in some way, shape, or form in order for it to be effective in raising some additional revenue. Next slide. Same thing on the consumption side. We've accounted for essentially those 100 new accounts per year. And so you can see here, we're anticipating that you'd go up from about 416 million gallons today in 5 years at 471 million. And then at the end of the 10 years, 541 million. Now, also recognize that we fully realize that water use does not happen in a straight line like this. It goes up and down considerably based on the weather. And so what we use is a trend line as opposed to, assuming that it's absolutely going to hit this percentage increase each year. We've got some sensitivity and analysis built into our model to help allow and mitigate some of that variance. But you have a really dry summer, you're going to sell more water. You have a really wet summer, you're going to sell less water. Next slide. Next. So some of the key assumptions within our model that we've got, and this is a model that we've used for, again, hundreds of different clients, not only across the state of Texas, but within the country, and even we do water rates for Fiji. As my business partner likes to say, somebody's got to do the water rates in Fiji, so why not us, right? But the rate model, again, has been tested over time, literally thousands of different times. Most personnel and operating expenses, we assume, will be continuing to increase at about 3 to 4% a year. We do take your budget at a line item level, and we identify what goes into those particular costs and at what rate we think each one of those line items is likely to increase over time. Certain costs increase at higher rates. Chemicals tend to outpace the general inflationary cost. Health insurance tends to outpace general inflationary costs, those kinds of things. Biggest impact on your rate plan are threefold: Arlington water and wastewater charges. You'll see here the amount of your operating budgets that those contracts take up on both the water and the wastewater side. Arlington water and wastewater operating and billing agreement, that operation and maintenance side of those agreements, and then also the debt issuance in the from 2023 that's funding the 5-year CIP. Those are the things that are really causing an impact on your rates today. Your total cost of service, which is just like it sounds, the cost of providing the service. You can see here on the water side, about 60% goes into the Arlington operation contract and the water purchases combined. So again, a significant amount, obviously, that goes directly to Arlington. Now, those are costs that any community would have. If you self-performed, like a lot of communities do, you'd have water production costs, you'd have O&M costs. These are simply through a contract with the City of Arlington. But again, if for some reason you wanted to get out of that contract, it's not like those costs go away. You're just paying them directly as opposed to indirectly. On the wastewater side, it's about 70% that goes into the Arlington contracts between the wastewater treatment and the operations contract. And so again, obviously, those are two pieces that are driving the total cost of service in a big way. Next slide. One other significant impact that we have looking forward is the way that you produce water or receive water, purchase water. Right now, about 44% comes from your city wells, 39% from City of Arlington, and about 16% comes from City of Fort Worth. Over the next 3 years or so, and again, in working with staff, we haven't just made this stuff up, but the idea here is that you'd be moving more and more towards purchasing water from Arlington. It's a good high quality of water, all of those sorts of things, but it is more expensive to purchase the water as opposed to using your existing wells. Your existing wells have ongoing operations and maintenance costs and replacement costs that go along with it as well. And so there's a fine balance, obviously, in understanding the total cost of producing water. But this makeup of going from 39% of purchased Arlington water up to 99% of purchased water from Arlington over the next 4 years through 2027 does have a significant impact on overall costs. And so we wanted to make sure that you see and understand that this has cost in two ways. One is the actual cost of the finished water is more expensive the more of it that you buy. But in negotiations, current negotiations with City of Arlington, there's a premium that you will be paying until such time as you are purchasing most of your water from Arlington. And after that point, you would no longer be paying that premium. So there's, again, a little bit of a balance of some additional cost, but also some savings once you get up to that point. Next slide. So to that point, however, in fiscal 2024, we expect you to spend about $900,000 to purchase Arlington water. This is not inclusive of their operations and maintenance contracts, simply purchasing the water. By 2027, you can see there that goes up to, a little glare on this screen, 2.7 million, so it triples by 2027. And again, that's because of the higher proportion of Arlington water that you're purchasing as opposed to producing at the wells. By 2033, that goes up to 4 million. So over the next 10 years, that increases fourfold. And that has obviously a significant impact on this overall rate plan. Next slide. Similarly, the wastewater treatment cost, and this is just the expected cost per unit that Arlington charges you to treat the wastewater, that goes up like it does, like we're having a conversation on your retail rates, the rates that Arlington or any other wholesale provider provides to any customer goes up over time. 2023, that was at $4.10. 2024, that's at $4.26. Within 5 years, we expect that to be just under $5, $4.99, and at the end year, $6.07 to treat per 1,000 gallons. So again, this is a good example of sort of that inflationary pressure that is on your rates that needs to be passed along in order for it to be recovered. Next slide. The total 5-year capital improvement plan that we have understood from your staff is $17.2 million. $2.7 million of that is on the water side and $14.5 on the wastewater side, with the big project being that $13 million sewer line installation in 3 phases. That is, as we understand it, these are the projects that you sold the 2023 debt for, and so these are the projects that the debt service will be coming due over the next couple of years, and so that's the rate plan that we are wrapping around in order to fund these projects. Next slide. So talking about the debt service payments, you can see here that particularly on the wastewater side, they go up markedly over the next couple of years, where the water debt service component stays pretty constant, $221,000 in 2024, and that just goes to $203,000 by 2033, a little bit of variation, but essentially relatively constant. From the wastewater side, right now, your debt service payments are at $73,000, almost $74,000. And by the end of the 10-year period, we expect that to go to $1 million. Not we expect, we know it's going to $1 million. That debt has already been issued, it's already been sold, and you're working those projects now. That does feather in over the next couple of years, so it goes up from $73,000 today up to $764,000 next year, $886,000, $956,000, and then you get up to the $1 million, and it stays pretty level after that. And so, again, obviously, a significant increase on the debt side from the wastewater piece, and that also drives the overall rate. Next slide. This is a combination of the Arlington water and wastewater operating contracts, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of a shift that we expect to happen in 2027 when you are planning to take only your minimum take or pay, or your minimum amount from Fort Worth and buy the remainder of the water from Arlington. When that happens, there is a premium that, again, it's not finalized as I understand it, but still in negotiation, a premium that Arlington is wanting to assess as part of this. Once you start taking all of your water, in essence, from Arlington, that premium then goes away. And that's why you see that drop between 2026 and 2027. So again, it's got that different, it's got that multi-variable dynamic of you're purchasing more water at a higher price, but then you also start to receive some benefit of being that large of a customer from Arlington, essentially. Next slide. So this bar chart simply is forecast water and wastewater cost of service. And you can see here there are really two different things. The different colors essentially are the different components of your cost of service. The treated water and wastewater, that the blue component of the line that's at the bottom, you can see how much that increases between 2023 all the way up through 2024 all the way up to 2033. And then the sort of bright teal on top is the debt service, and that is also changing pretty considerably. So all in, your forecast water and wastewater cost of service would go from $6.4 million today up to $11.7 million in 10 years, and just over the next 5 years, about $9.5 million. Obviously, that's nearly a 50% increase over the next 5 years in your water and wastewater cost of service. That's what it costs you to provide the service. And so we'll talk next about the rates that we need to work through. So our preliminary rate proposal is, what we're looking at is we're suggesting that you implement a 5-year rate plan. We do that for a couple of different reasons. Sometimes we work with communities and it's a 1-year rate plan because there's just not that much that's changing over the next couple of years, and so they can really take a look at it every year. Sometimes we look at a 3, or sometimes we look at a 5-year rate plan. We don't suggest that you adopt rates further than 5 years out. There are just too many variables that come into play when you start going that far out. But with the 5-year rate plan, what that does is it allows you to really kind of work into that full cost of service that we're expecting to see essentially stabilize after 5 years. You'll be purchasing the vast majority of your water through Arlington, and you'll have all of the debt service from the 2023 issuance on the books at that point that you're paying for, and that gets fairly stable at that point. I'm not suggesting that you'll, after 5 years, you don't have to do any more increases. There's still all of those inflationary pressures that I talked about earlier on your system, and so you're going to still want to take a look at that pretty regularly after those 5 years, but the big lift is the next 5 years. The rate plan features that we're looking at in this preliminary, at least, are a percentage of annual adjustment across all customer classes. What I mean by customer classes simply is the residential, commercial, those kinds of things. If we raised, if we looked at raising residential rates a certain percentage, we applied the same percentage to the other classes of customers as well. We are looking at restructuring your multifamily rate to implement a base charge by meter size and an inclining rate tier per 1,000 gallons that mirrors residential rates pending Arlington billing system verification. There's some differentiation right now between the rate structure that you have on the books and what they're able to bill, and so we're working through that with your staff as well. That's not a big deal from a rate standpoint. It's just simply something that we're trying to kind of get cleaned up and make sure it works well. We are recommending that you continue your senior disabled credit of $750 off of the base charge, although I will say and just point out to make clear that we are recommending that that stay level at $750. And the plan would fund all the city's financial requirements, something we call coverage or debt coverage. You probably heard a little bit as part of your debt issuance from your financial advisors of you need to have a certain amount of coverage of available revenue to make sure that you're able to pay that debt service at any given point in time, your percentage of operating expenses and those sorts of key performance indicators. And then also the plan would include all rate classes. We don't have the detail here in this presentation for things like your outside city customers and your fire hydrant meters and all of those sorts of things, just because it's just can be a little bit overwhelming in detail. But just recognize that all of those customer classes would be impacted at the same percentage levels as the rates that we're going to be talking about tonight. Next slide. So The preliminary water rate recommendation, this is on the water side only, and this is residential. Again, we're focusing on that 80% use of the residential side. You can see here your current base rate for your typical residential meter, which is a 3/4 inch meter, is $20. We recommend that for fiscal 2024 that this first rate increase would go up to $22.60 for, again, your typical residential meter as the base charge by 2025, $25.54, and you can see there 26 through 28, eventually getting up to $32.16 on the base rate. The volume rate, we're recommending you keep the same volume structure that you've got with an inverted block rate. The first tier would go from $275. At the end of 5 years, it'd be up to $442. And the other tiers you can see there, those are all adjusted at the same percentages as that first tier, 636 up to 862, and the highest tier of 20,000 gallons up from 670 to 1077. Again, all of this also continues to assume the senior disabled discount of $750 off the base rate. Next slide. So the commercial and industrial, one of the things that you can see here, the same concept, same idea, $26 for a 3/4 inch. A typical commercial meter is a 2-inch meter. They range all the way from 3/4 inch all the way up to 8-inch within your system, but a typical is a 2-inch meter. So we'll kind of focus in on that. That's $138.58 today. That would go up to $222.85 by the end of the 5 years. Same percentage increases as on the residential side. And the volume rates here, you can see again, same percentage increases as on the residential side, although commercial does have that fourth tier of over 50,000 gallons, would go from $838 up to $1348. Next slide. And after this, we'll show bill impact, because the rates are one thing, but what does the customer actually pay is what they're most interested in, right? So the preliminary wastewater rate recommendation, you can see, goes from a $30 base charge today for residential up to $36. Again, with the reduced rate for senior disabled of $750 off of the base rate, so $22.50 for the senior disabled rate. Goes up, but the residential rate goes from 30 to 36 in this first rate change, and then eventually ends up at 54.77 for your base rate by fiscal 2028. Again, the cost of service on your wastewater side is increasing more rapidly based on that debt service for the large projects that you've had underway now. On the volume rate, 290 on the residential would go up to 529 by fiscal 28. For residential, commercial 672 up to 1176, and industrial from 450 up to 787. Next slide. All right, so combined charges bill impact. So this is looking at water and wastewater alone. It doesn't include solid waste or anything like that, so water and wastewater only. We took a typical residential use case of 10,000 gallon water and 5,000 gallon wastewater. Again, everybody's bills are going to vary each month based on how much they actually use, but this is just a typical use case. So today they'd pay a little over $105 for 10,000 gallons of water and 5,000 gallons of sewer. For the fiscal 24 rate change, that would go up to $121.62 for a change of $16.77. It's a 16% increase. Obviously, that's a stout increase. I would remind, however, that the rates have not been changed since 2018. And so while that probably is not of a whole lot of solace to those that would be paying increased rates now, that is part of the pressure that is putting on the rates today, is the fact that rates have not changed in some time. You can see here then that for the fiscal 2025, it would go up again about 16%, up to $141.40, another $19 increase on a monthly basis for fiscal 25, and then the percentage increases begin to come down, 11.7% in fiscal 26, down to 7 and 5.5% for 27 and 28. That's when we see your rates effectively stabilizing, and all you would need to be doing then is keeping up essentially with inflation or any of the additional new capital improvement projects that you've got coming on board. On the commercial side, you can see here, again, goes up about 16.6%. And the difference in percentage there is based on how the customer uses the water, not because the percentages are different on the base charges themselves. But it would go up from a typical commercial customer with a 1.5-inch meter, 20,000 gallon water and wastewater use would go up from $370 today up to $431 next year. And you can see there, it shakes out and goes, again, it modulates down to that 5.5% by the end of the preliminary proposed rate plan period of fiscal 2028. So again, I recognize that these are large increases. However, the combination of the CIP, the debt service coming on board over the next couple of years, the change in working with Arlington and purchasing more water from them, their increased costs on a per unit basis, as well as the fact that you haven't raised rates since 2018 are all combining. And, you know, not to mention we've had highest inflation in a generation in the last couple of years that you haven't been immune to. All of those factors are going into the rate recommendation that you see here. What this would do, though, is it would get you to the point of where you're paying and funding fully all of that debt service issuance, all of the Arlington costs that we're aware of, the inflationary pressures that have been put in place will enable you to continually provide good, safe drinking water with a system that's well maintained, and to treat the wastewater and remove it in a way that your citizens are expecting you to do. It also does cover all of your debt service coverage ratios, your operating reserve needs, and all of those sorts of things as well. So again, I know that's a lot of information to put on your plate. This is a work session. We're not asking or suggesting that you take any action on it tonight, but I would be happy to take any questions or comments that you've got.
Yeah, you're right. That's a lot of information.
It is.
I have a lot of questions, but we'll start out with council. Councilman Glover, we'll start with you.
Hi, Jason. On slide 7 for the rate volume, sorry, I'm trying to read my notes and speak. On slide 7 for the rate volume, you mentioned it's only the winter rates, not summer rates. Is that also the same rate used here on slide 29 when looking at the combined charges impact? So the reason I'm asking is the combined charges impact looking at a very cold, rainy season and then not the August when everyone's yard is just hanging on by a thread?
Sure.
So that's kind of the first question there is the impact looked at the winter rate or is it a blended rate between winter and summer?
Sure. So typically speaking, again, your average residential user uses a little over 10,000 gallons of water per month on average over the course of the entire year. Generally speaking, what that means is in July and August, they're probably going to be using about 15,000 gallons. And in the winter months when they're not watering outside, they're going to be using about 10,000 gallons, or I'm sorry, about 5 to 7,000 gallons, generally speaking. So the way that your winter averaging works is you take a couple 3 months during the winter time, and you set your sewer consumption based on that average. That's what the winter average is. The rates then get applied to whatever that average is on an account-by-account basis. So if at your house you use 7,000 gallons on average for the winter average months of water, you would then, for the remainder of the year, get charged 7,000 gallons of wastewater consumption based on that. If I used 10,000 gallons, I'd get charged 10,000 gallons for the remainder of the year. But the rate is the same. It's just, is it applied to 7,000 gallons or the 10,000 gallons? The bill comparison that we show there on the later slide is based on a 10,000 gallon consumption, which again is about your monthly average on water side, and a 5,000 gallon winter average. That's a pretty common scenario that we see is that whatever the average overall annual consumption per household is, when you talk about the winter months, it tends to be about half of the overall average consumption. So again, this is there are certainly times when an average 10,000 gallon user is using 20,000 gallons. The dollar impact would be more significant than what's shown on that slide. But on average, they're going to be using 10. There's also months that they're going to be using, in order to get a 5,000 gallon winter average, in the winter months, they're going to be using 5,000 gallons of water and 5,000 gallons of sewer. That makes sense. So we try to show a realistic combined bill, recognizing that in those hot, dry summer months, it is likely to be significantly higher. And in the winter months, if they've turned their irrigation off, it's likely to be much lower than that impact. And on average, bear out to be roughly what we show there.
Got it. So switching gears for a second, the operation expense forecast between 2026 and 2027, we're going to save about, I think it's about $500,000 a year.
In that ballpark, yes.
Is that just the premium that Arlington is charging us, or is that the premium Arlington charging us and the savings that the city will get for no longer having to maintain its own wells from an OpEx standpoint?
No, that is just the decrease or the removal of the Arlington premium.
Okay.
Is all that is. We haven't factored in OpEx savings on your wells. What we've done is we've kept your OpEx level in a couple of those years to try and recognize some of that savings. The nature of wells tends to be, like the water business in general, it's either a really expensive year or it's a not very expensive year. There's pumping costs with electricity and those kinds of things, but the big hit is you have a well go down, and you have to do either a repair or replacement of that well. And that's where the big hit tends to be. We can't prognosticate those things, obviously. You would see some reduction in your pumping costs, although it's not going to be an enormous amount in comparison with your overall operating costs.
Okay. Thank you, Jason.
Councilman Michaels?
I have no questions, but thank you for your presentation. I do like the fact that we are doing it in small steps and not just gouging the customers with the big hike increase that they did back in 2018. So, thank you.
Councilman Navarez?
Just one question for you. When would you recommend us doing another rate study? I see you're projecting for 10 years, but there's a lot can happen in 3
Yes.
years, for example.
Absolutely. So again, while we've got a projection for 10 years, we would recommend that you not take action on rates any more than 5 years out. That's sort of the drop dead of when you should likely do another rate study in about 5 years, when that rate plan is now old. A lot of things have changed, all those kinds of things. A lot of our clients take a look at it every year. They do a sort of a mini rate study every year, and then 5 years, they do a formal rate study where they look at all of the costs, not just the changes. But about every 5 years is a very good practice to make sure that you're looking and understanding what your total cost is for both sides and what is causing those cost increases. Because one thing we didn't get into detail here, but we're also trying to make sure that we match up your water revenues with your water costs and your wastewater revenues with your wastewater costs. And those can get askew pretty quickly as well based on capital improvement plans and those sorts of things. But quick answer, every 5 years is a good rule of thumb. If there are major changes, sooner.
One more question, then you can probably answer this one. So these rates are projected to effectively cover costs. That includes, Arlington's costs, our cost, and the debt for the infrastructure. Is there any wiggle room from that for reserve? For catastrophic failures or?
Yes, we maintain according to city policy the reserve throughout the entire 10-year period. And so, yes, we are highly recommending that you've got reserve, and we also make sure that your debt service coverage ratios that are in your bond covenants that you're required to have are in place through the entire period of time as well. So, yes, it is not just cover costs. We consider those catastrophic failures to be part of your costs, whether you experience them in a given year or not. And so we account for that as part of the rates.
Okay. Thank you so much and well done.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I pass.
Councilman Griffith?
I don't have any questions this time, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It is a lot of information. Do you happen to know the numbers on the meter sizes? Do you happen to know, like the breakdown on, like for a residential? And mainly what I'm curious, I know the majority is 3/4, but obviously as you move into the 1, 1.5, and 2, those rates climb up. Do you happen to have the numbers on those?
Not off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that and make sure that we include that as part of the backup prior to coming back to you.
Okay. And then the other thing that I've noticed is there's some legislative mandates that are unfunded that is part of this as well. It's not mentioned in, what's driving this, but it is actually under the capital improvement plan.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, a little bit. SB 3 requires backup generation and those sorts of things. It was essentially in response to Winter Storm Uri and trying to make sure that the utilities are up to par on their emergency responsiveness and preparedness. It's a relatively small amount of your total capital improvement plan. It is highlighted on the capital improvement plan slide that you showed. But I will also say that, that's one of the recent changes. But some of the things that are causing a significant increase in costs on the treatment side, particularly on the wastewater treatment side, are longstanding legislative mandates. For instance, once you reach a certain amount of your capacity, in this case, Arlington needs to be building additional capacity. And that is based on TCEQ requirements, those kinds of things. So while there have been some recent changes that are driving specific costs, there's a fair amount of both state and federal regulation that actually drives the treatment side of your costs.
And I think someone mentioned the 2016 rates. I don't know if that was, did you mention it? So I just wanted to say that you're exactly right. 2016 is actually higher than what the 10-year or the 5-year rate is for water right now. So, and then in 2016, that was, the big water rate increase that, kind of got everyone's attention. And then it went down and there was a small reduction in 2016 after that. And then there was a decrease in 2017 and a decrease in 2018. And there has been no adjustment since 2018 at all. So if you're saying that is basically kind of a 4% every year, and we haven't adjusted, you can see that those first 2 years are like a makeup, if you will, for those. Gosh, I had another, there's another thought I was gonna, it'll circle back to me a minute.
Sure.
But you're suggesting that we start this in March?
Yes, for fiscal +24, to wrap up your current existing fiscal year, and then begin annual increases for the very point of having, again, recognizing these are still significant increases, but as moderate as you are able to each year, as opposed to having a 20 or 30 or 40% hit when that full debt service comes due in 4 years, when you start paying the full $1 million. Those sorts of things that you absolutely have to do it by then. We believe that building into that is a better approach than trying to drop it all at once.
Okay, I remember what I was thinking, because I have a lot of things going through my head. So I don't have the paperwork, but I remember council originally was presented, the presentation from Arlington Water when we were going to go with Arlington, that there was going to be, that this was like the 5-year plan, and this is what it looked like going with Arlington, and this is how much money we would save. But that actually did not pan out. So this is kind of where we are right now. And so my question is, are there any savings opportunities? Because this is, I'm assuming, this is baked in maximum potential rate increase.
Yeah, we try to be conservative from the perspective of you've got bondholders that expect to be paid their debt service.
Right.
You've got operating cost assumptions that we've baked in, including this premium from Arlington that's most recently come through. We're accounting for that at the amount that they've asked, and recognizing that that still could go down. If it does, great, we can adjust the rate plan based on that. We do believe that this is, in essence, a worst-case scenario based on the best information that we've got today.
And then the debt service is, at some point, that gets paid, all right? So once that gets paid, then you just continue to do these rate studies just to look at
Yeah.
where we need to be. Okay.
And
Kind of answering my own question, so.
Yeah, in most cases, not in all, but in most cases, this is, I don't know if this is 20-year debt, 25-year debt, something like that. By that time, you've got more capital projects that need to come on board, and so you generally end up leveling your debt service over time. Hopefully, though, you don't have one that goes up from $73,000 and up to $1 million over the case of 3 years. That is a big hit, obviously, and that's driving a large part of this discussion.
So I just want to remind everyone that the 17 million, the bond debt, the biggest part of that was the sewer, and that's something that had been neglected for years and years and years and years, and we were to an emergency situation, that this isn't something that we wanted, this is something that we had to have. The water tanks had to be replaced. The sewer lines have to be replaced. So, that's, part of this increase as well, so. I think, does anyone have any follow-up questions? Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, if you could, can you give maybe a little bit more explanation in reference to our reserve? So when we're indicating a reserve, is that funding based on an annual basis? For, in other words, if we have a capital improvement plan come up and we're averaging, say, 400 or 500,000 a year, is there a particular number that you were looking at for us to be able to make sure we can fund that on an annual basis?
I'd have to dig into the study to see the specific amounts. I know that we're keeping at minimum a 90-day operating reserve, which is generally considered to be best practice, 60 to 120 days. Generally speaking, 90 days is a good happy medium there. Obviously, if there's a catastrophic failure, that provides for some ability to fund it on an ongoing basis. We haven't built in accumulating capital for a capital fund, as some cities would rather be able to pay cash over time than debt fund, which I understand, I get that, and it's very expensive to do, particularly when you've got unmet needs currently. So I don't believe we've got anything in addition to your existing capital funding from a cash accumulation standpoint. Just from an operating reserve standpoint, I believe it's at 90 days. I don't have that number committed to memory, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
A lot to think about there. Okay, we are going to, are we ready over here? All right, thumbs up. We are going to, well, we're actually at that anyway, so we'll just move right on to our reports announcement. Item number 1, the promotional ceremony for our firefighters, Chance Warren and Zachary Dayton to drive engineer. We'll have Chief Brown come up. Right, okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I was wanting to take a few minutes of your time to recognize two of our personnel that recently promoted to the position of driver engineer. The driver engineer is a critical position within the fire department. They're responsible for their overall operation, care, and maintenance of the vehicles that we respond in. These guys are tasked with ensuring that the apparatus and all of the equipment are accounted for and up to tip-top shape in case that we need them. Gentlemen, come on up. A little bio on each of them. Chance Warren began his career with Kennedale Fire Department in May of 2018 as a firefighter EMT. In May of 2019, Chance obtained his paramedic certification, which is a pretty arduous thing to achieve. Chance is married to his wife Tiffany, has 3 children, daughter Felicia, sons Colton and Sawyer. In his spare time, Chance likes to coach Pee Wee football. I can't imagine. Parents are too crazy for me to do that. Zach Dayton was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas. He attended Texas A&M, where he completed Fire Academy and EMT school. Zach then moved to Fort Worth and searched for a job within the fire service. He was hired by Kennedale in April of 2019. He went to paramedic school and obtained his paramedic certification in December of 2020. In his spare time, Zach enjoys playing golf. I think he's a bit of a golf nut. Gentlemen, I just want to congratulate you for your recent promotion. I look forward to what the future holds for the both of you. Thank you.
Make sure to get pictures with the family.
Yeah, we've got photo ops set up out in the hallway.
Okay, very good. That's good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to both of you. Congratulations, Chief. We will not have item number 2. The officer isn't here this evening due to illness, right? Yeah. And so we'll move to our updates from the council. Councilman Navarez, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not too much going on since we last met. I did go to the senior bingo Christmas party that was done by the Rotary Club, and it was a good time for that. After that, my family and I went to Colorado and tried to have a good time, but apparently we brought the heat and we didn't have too much snow like predicted, which was good for the drive, but not good for snowmobiling, for example, which we didn't get to do. But I hear now they have a good 6 feet or so ha-ha on me, I guess. A few things coming up. We have the chili cook-off for the Rotary annual event. That'll be Saturday, February 24th. Tickets are $5. This is our annual event that fundraises all the scholarships that we give to our seniors for both schools in the city. So make sure you mark that on your calendar. That's February 24th at 6 p.m. And then I'm sure you're going to mention this, Madam Mayor, but tomorrow is the Chamber Luncheon in which you will be speaking the State of the City. So I'd like to invite the local business owners to come over and check us out at 11:30 tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Griffith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So updates for us, Veterans Memorial Committee. We've had one more meeting since our last update. And then just today, city manager and myself went and met with MMA to discuss their consultation services to help us with our presentation coming in March. So there'll be more coming from that. We have 2 more meetings this month. But I think as far as getting the vision put together, we're ready to start putting together an actual rendition or something that the council can see. We've worked with KKB and EDC to come up with some options and to get their input and feedback as part of that overall master plan for the space and how the changes to the centerpiece will impact the rest of the park.
Excellent.
That's pretty much it.
Excellent. I look forward to that. Did you say that would be in March?
Yes, our target is the March 19th meeting, I think it is.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Michaels, Mayor Pro Tem Michaels. I was looking at Councilman Glover about that. Okay, I'll see. Mayor Pro
It
Tem?
doesn't matter. I did have my, on January 8th, the Charter Committee, and our next meeting is going to be January 22nd. We're down to the last 3 or 4 items, and we're looking at the proper wording, and we'll get the committee's blessing on it, and then we'll be sending it to council by February, which we might have to call a special meeting to get it on the ballot for, is it February 16th, Rayan? Yeah, we need to have a special meeting before the 16th.
Before the 16th, yes.
That's it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Look forward to hearing that, and thank you for all your work on that. Councilman Glover?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No major updates for me with the holidays. Things just kind of went quiet.
Yeah.
So should have more next month.
Good for you. Excellent. Well, over the past month, I've met with the residents and businesses that are excited about the opportunities and the activities that we're having in Kennedale, and continuing to network for resources and funding for our capital improvement needs and our parks developments. I did have, on a personal basis, I had the opportunity, my son-in-law coached for Arizona. He just got a new job with the University of Arizona, Washington in Seattle this weekend. So, but before they left, I had the opportunity to go to the Alamo Bowl in San Antonio, and got to be there for that win. That was a lot of fun. And then you mentioned the February 24th, the chili cook-off. I did get a request to mention that, so I'm mentioning it. And it is, like you said, $5 admission. And we are actually kicking around, council is kicking around being one of the competitors, if we can talk Councilman Michaels into cooking for us, Mayor Pro Tem. We're going to be the winner. Okay, there you go. Okay, so I guess we're in. Julie, do you hear that? We're in. So we'll get the paperwork and the information we need to do that. And for $5, it's a fun thing, and if anyone has any giveaways that they want to meet with, you can go to the Rotary website or get with Councilman Navarez, and he can give you information on that. And I just want to remind everyone that if you hear anything or see anything online or from a neighbor or rumors or whatever, we are available to answer those questions for you. So, I don't know how to express this. Just call me, call our city manager, call anyone up here. Anytime. My phone number, 817-690-3821. Call me. If you call me, I promise to respond to your call. Because I would rather answer the question. I'd rather you hear it from us than hear things that just get circulated that may or may not be, for the most part, are not true. So please, rather than recirculating things that aren't true, just ask us. We're here, and we'd like to answer that rather than seeing things getting circulated that aren't true. So with that, I will turn it over to updates from the city manager. He has a lot of updates for us.
Great, thanks, Mayor. We have several, and I want to invite some of our staff, our leadership staff, to come up and share some of the projects that we have that's going on. Chief Hogan will come up. One of the things that we've had for several months now is some of our complaints and concerns over some of our traffic, particularly on Bowman Springs. That will be the one that Chief will give us some update and let you know how we're moving forward and what our possible solution is for that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is just an update on a project that I've been working on for the city manager. We've received a lot of complaints in the 1100 block of Bowman Springs Drive, primarily coming off the service road into the city. A recommendation that I'm going to make is to install traffic control devices consisting of stop signs at both the intersection of Pennsylvania and Bowman Springs and Courier Edwards and Bowman Springs. We did a traffic survey between October October 27th and, trying to go back in my notes here, I'm sorry, and November 7th. I'm sorry, October 25th and November 1st. The vehicle count for this time period was 63,000 vehicles. That's the total going towards our traffic control devices and then away from the traffic control devices. We have a digital speed sign that continuously records information. One of the new signs, two signs we actually installed in Bowman Springs, we can pull data from both of them at any time. So this is the time frame that we used. The speeds, that's Bowman Springs, it's a 35 mile per hour zone, if you're not familiar with it. We have had some unreasonably high speeds. I'm not going to state what those speeds are to glorify any of the type of speeding, but it's very high. I'll be more than happy to share that with you at a later date if you'd like. And these are concerns through from the school, Fellowship Academy, residents in the area. We have kids that walk to the junior high. I know that Fellowship also, they use the athletic facilities at the junior high as well. So there's a lot of concerns about pedestrian traffic crossing Bowman Springs. We also are just concerned about the speeds. We've had 3 major crashes on Bowman Springs just in this time frame since January 1st to November 7th. 2 of them were in the intersection of Pennsylvania and Bowman Springs and were significant crashes. Thankfully, no one was seriously hurt, but the potential was there. And then we had a bicyclist that was struck near Quarry A on Bowman. So we've had some major crash activity in addition to the speeding and the complaints and concerns of people being able to turn on to Bowman Springs safely. So I've turned in my report to the city manager for his consideration, but that's one of the biggest projects we've been working on thus far.
Is that for just Bowman Springs and Pennsylvania, or is it Corrier, Edwards, and Pennsylvania, both of those intersections?
Both of those, sir.
Okay.
Both intersections. I would also recommend additional crosswalks and things like that. So we'd really try to slow traffic down and get people to understand that this is a residential area. The roadway is very well constructed. It can support commercial motor vehicles. I know that Public Works through community development also put an additional no truck sign closer to the interstate, closer to the service road, so that's helped. But we do regularly and routinely stop trucks also coming down Bowman Springs. It's a no truck zone all the way down. So we're doing quite a bit of work during the course of this. From January 1st to November 7th, we did 113 traffic details out there. We've done more since, and we've stopped 104 vehicles during that same time frame, which is also higher now, especially going into the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sigmund, can you come up and give us an update on our public works, particularly dealing with our infrastructure and road projects that we currently have going on?
Sure. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Just a quick update on some of the projects that we have. We have several projects that's carded to be done in the next couple of years. But a quick update on some that we have going on right now is Eden Road South, that's been handled by the Tarrant County. It's already in construction, and we anticipate construction, weather permitting, before the end of the month. And that's the section between Mansfield Cardinal and Kennedale Parkway. So if you drive that way, it's under construction right now. Another project is the Collette Sublet Improvement Project. That's already bid and awarded. We're going to have a pre-construction on the 23rd of this month at the Covenant Baptist Church at Wildcat Way at 5:30 on the 23rd. With that being said, we anticipate to have a start of construction by March 1st for completion in 270 days. It put us 9 months from March, so that's like October, November of this year. Another one. The wastewater interceptor project, that's the big dollar value project that we're talking about. It's right now, we have a professional services agreement under review. Once that is done, and we start design, well, we already had preliminary design already, but when we officially have 100% design completed, we anticipate the construction to be completed in 2027. That's a big project from South New Hope Road by the racetrack all the way to 820. That's the big funding stuff, $13+ million. Another project we have is a Safe Route to School at the, I guess it's Westdale addition. We had a pre-bid. We're gonna have bid opening on the 25th of this month. I guess that's next week or week after. Once that been said, we anticipate to have the sidewalk completed by 114 days. So, and we're gonna try to work that project within the school days off, like the spring break and summer break, and hopefully we should be done before the end of the year. So that's gonna happen this year as well. And then the ground storage tank. Right now, we have a request for proposal under review as well. Once that's been completed and approved, we're gonna have that advertised, and we anticipate to have that in construction this year to be completed in next year. So it's gonna take about 1 year design and construction for the ground storage tank at Carruthers Avenue. Another big project is, well, not the big project, is that Valley Lane stabilization project that's been going on and it was on the books for, I don't know, 2015, whenever it is. That's in the progress. We're still waiting on FEMA to give us approval for that grant. Once that's done, all the design is completed. We're just ready to go into construction, just waiting for that grant approval. We anticipate that should happen sometime this year, later in the summer, and we should start construction immediately after that. Another one is the North Little School Road Extension Project. That's in design, and we anticipate that to go into construction, everything consistent in 2025. And that's going to be another 1-year project or less, 9 months anticipated. So those are some of the big projects we have coming down the pike. You know, we still have, what's that one? Everett Road and Valley Lane Bridge project is part of the TxDOT Summer Reap Grant project that was part of New Hope Bridge. That's on the books, and we want to start that. It's about 90% complete in design. If within the next month or so, we should have 100% design completion. With that being said, we're gonna have it advertised 1 month, have contract approved in another month, so by the end of spring, we should go into construction. And we anticipate that to be done in about 3 months. So that's that bridge, putting barricades and railing at Valley Lane and Everett Bridge. We're gonna be stabilizing that creek underneath there. So that's that project. So in a nutshell, that's a quick update on some of the projects that we have that we want to start this year and get completed by almost all of them by 2027.
Just a short update to add on to the Everett Bridge and the Valley Lane. Those two projects were in conjunction with the TxDOT Bridge on New Hope, with TxDOT providing the funding for that bridge on New Hope. In return, the city's responsibility to basically
We paid for
update
design.
and basically put railings on one of our bridges on Valley Lane. So those two projects were roughly about $380,000, which would be 100% our cost.
It's 378,000. 378. Any questions?
Thank you. A quick update with economic development. Some of the things last couple of months we've been looking at is purchasing some property that was located on Eden Road. That property was purchased through the auction with Tarrant County auction. I'm not sure what they called. The sheriff's office or public? Yes, yeah, the public auction. We attended that on January the 2nd. We were able to get it at minimum bid, which is roughly $4,500. It's about 0.32 acres, 0.32. Also with that, it's the property that we've had that encampment on. So we're at the point now, once the property is truly deeded to us, we'll go in and we're going to clean that property and it will look the way it should. So that's a big step forward. That's always been an eyesore for City of Kennedale, even though it's not our property or within our city limits, and it's still not, but it is our property. We own the property at this point, and it's going to look right. So that's a good thing. Also, I did submit a bid for the other property on Oak Crest, the 4 parcels up there. Made an offer of $180 for that. They did accept that bid or offer. So here shortly, we will be able to take possession of that as well. The total cost is roughly going to be $180,750. So we got that as well at this point. We're just going through the process of getting it into our name. That's all I have.
Good job. Great updates. Thank you so much. That's a lot of moving parts. We'll move to our financial reports for the city and EDC. And we'll have our Director Horton come up.
Good evening. I'll do what I can to be brief. You guys had a pretty intense presentation involving numbers earlier, so I don't want to bore you completely to death. Looking through December, we just see we're 25% through the year. We've hit the first quarter. So when you look in the general fund, just some numbers stand out. Our property taxes at 54.7%. That's relatively close to where we were prior year at 59%. Sales tax, we're trending behind, but I'm not ready to signal any alarms yet. And when you look down at the expenditures, all of the departments are under 25%. We do have the non-departmental, it's at 52.7%. The current year, if you look at the prior year, it was at just under 60%. The bulk of that's our insurance expenditure. It was over $300,000. So that was a one-time thing. I believe we're still on track there, so I'm not ready to have any concern yet. Just looking back through the other funds, some of the major ones, the water sewer fund, our service sales to date are at 21.9% of the budget. Sewer, the wastewater is at 25%, and some of the expenditures that are a little bit up, they correspond with the increase in revenue. So that's tracking as expected. The debt service fund, you might notice at 25% through the year, we're at 47% expenditure year to date. There's really 2 major times of the year where that gets hit. So we've hit the first one. The next one will bring us up to 100%. All of the other funds are tracking similarly. Of course, with the EDC, their revenues are somewhat tied to property tax, although we do have some revenue from a land sale. So that's the increase there, while we're at 41% year to date. And in the capital projects fund also, you'll notice that the investment income is higher. That's investment income on our bond money, which, if there are no questions, that segues me perfectly into the investment piece.
Sorry, John, which page are you on?
I was flipping all over.
Got it.
The general fund is on page 1 of 8. The debt service fund, the utility funds I mentioned, the stormwater, water sewer, that's on page 2. The EDC's page 8 of 8. I typically try to stay what's on my cover page. Okay, moving on to the investment report. There's not much to update on this. There's really, as far as the last one I gave you, this is pretty much in line We had the bulk of our funds in pool accounts. We had a portion with Frost Brokerage. In a recent month, I believe it was last month, we approved a new vendor being Baird, R.W. Baird and Company for investments. We didn't actually invest with them until last week, so that didn't hit the report for 12/31. But just some numbers or some perspective on TexPool. On 12/31, the APY was 5.5, Techstar 5.47, Frost Brokerage, which was a money market account, was at 4.8. Mentioned collateral. We have a collateral agreement, so as far as our cash goes, we were protected. The pooled funds are fully collateralized. We actually kept under FDIC insurance level for most of the time at Wells Fargo. What we didn't is covered by our collateral agreement. And the money market with Frost Brokerage, it's all government-backed securities, so that's completely safe. The principal piece is, at any rate. Upcoming action, I did put on here at the time of publish, was to increase our investment relationship to Frost Brokerage to $10 million, establish an investment account with Baird with an initial value of $10 million. Both of those actions have already happened. They happened last week. Essentially, it's our bond money that we haven't spent yet that we've invested. So it ends up being a little bit under the 17 million, but the idea being that we start we start at least this calendar year with $10 million at each organization. And there's differing strategies between the two. Frost Brokerage, we're staggering T-bills. With R.W. Baird and Company, it's more in government-backed securities rather than the T-bills. But there is a T-bill element to that as well. But I can definitely get more into that the next investment report when we can see our returns from those investments.
Excellent. Any questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move right along to our consent agenda. We have one item, approval for the minutes from December 19th. Do you have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve, second.
Madam Mayor, I second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, we'll go into our individual consideration. First one is, before we get started, are you guys okay if we just keep moving straight through this? Anyone? Okay. Discussion approval for the interlocal agreement between the City of Kennedale and Fort Worth Transportation Authority. We have this in place already, just to let people know. This is just our contract for this year. It's door-to-door paratransit services for the elderly and persons with disabilities within Tarrant County. Do you want to speak to that before we talk about it, or before I take a motion? Okay. Do I have a motion? Or do you guys want to discuss it first? Sorry, he threw me off there a little bit. So that's okay. That's okay. So this is a contract that we already have in place. This is just our new contract. It's one day a week service on Tuesdays, I believe. And you have to sign up for it. You have to be pre-approved for it. You have to sign up for it. They call and they come and pick you up and take you to specific locations. So that's what this is for this year. It's the exact same thing we had last year. And I believe, I was trying to see in the packet if they had the numbers. Yes. So you can see in the very back, the numbers of people the trips from 2022 and the number of trips from 2023. So it is a service that's used, and it costs us, it's a minimal cost of I think $3,000.
It looks like it's $10,000 for the year.
Yeah. So with that, unless anyone has questions, I'll take a motion.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Kennedale and the Fort Worth Transportation.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a second.
Madam Mayor, I second.
All in favor? Unanimous. All right, thank you for that. And then on item number 2, I met with the city manager this earlier today, and in a conversation, there's some additional information that I'd like council to have before we bring this up for a vote. And so what I would like to present tonight is if someone would make a motion to table this until we can have additional negotiations on this piece.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to table item 2 under the individual consideration items.
Okay, I have a motion to have a second.
Madam Mayor, second.
All in favor? Against, or unanimous? Okay, thank you for that. And then item number 3, discussion and approval for a 4% increase with Waste Connections beginning February 1st, 2024. We'll have our district manager, Abel Marino, come up from Waste Connections. Hi, Abel.
There we go.
There we go.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Abel Moreno, District Manager for Waste Connections. Here again, another year, requesting a 4% due to the CPI. If you recall, last year, the CPI was at 10%. I met the city halfway, and we agreed to a 5%. Going through this practice, we noticed an error on our part. We did not increase our residential rate of 5% from last year. We're not going to ask for those funds. That was our mistake. We are going to ask that we receive a 4% this year, and on the residential side, we add that to the 5% that was already approved. I'd like to add that we are very good partners with the city. The Christmas event that was held, we donated $5,000 for the Christmas event, another $3,000 for a food truck, as well as we are working close with the city on the encampment cleanup, that we're going to donate some roll-off hauls for that cleanup. So with that said, 4% goes for the maintenance, upkeep, also annual wages for our staff that work very hard. I'd like to add, I believe we were the only trash company in Dallas-Fort Worth that was operating on Monday. Tomorrow you will receive no delays. We should be in and out in the city in no time. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Abel. Start with Councilman Navarez.
Madam Mayor, can I go last, please? May I go last?
Yes, you may. Councilman Glover?
I don't think I have any questions on the rates increases. One thing I have seen, I think the city of Arlington is doing this, is they are going to 1 day pickup. Are there any plans for Waste Connections to change their pickup schedules?
We have no problem with that. Our contract is up in 2025, and we would love to work on bringing that rate down, which can be done with a once-a-week pickup and/or carts.
Can you elaborate on the carts?
Well, right now, you've got a take-all for trash. You've already got your recycle carts. For trash, basically, whatever's at the curb, we got to pick up. There could be some cost savings if we, across the board, go to a cart content only, which is similar to what Arlington is moving towards and what you see in Fort Worth.
Okay. Last question, and it's not probably part of this, but is there an opportunity to do a bulk pickup? Because I know in, let's say, city of Dallas, once a month, they come through with a big truck and a big grabber, and they just pick up, refrigerators, couches, whatever's on the curb. Is that something that we could employ or have a service provided to Kennedale?
Yes, sir. We could definitely provide that service.
Okay.
We'd have to look at, obviously, the costs, but we could do it. We could absolutely provide that service.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Griffith?
Thank you, Madam
I'm just
Mayor.
going to look tonight.
That's fine. Well, one question I have, and please forgive me, I may have misunderstood. So you were saying the rate was approved for 5%, yet you all did not apply that. So does that mean moving forward, what the citizens are going to see is that 5% applied that was approved? And if we approve this, an additional 4%. So what they'll see is they didn't see 5% last year, they'll see it this year plus the 4. So they're actually looking at a 9% increase overall.
So what you're going to see is, and I think it's clear if I give you where the rate was. So it was at 1439. Now it'll be at 1574, which is a $1.35 increase. But you are correct, exactly what you said, yes. But we are not asking for that $19,000 back, which is what it comes out to.
Councilman Navarez?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council, for indulging me to go last. Ms. Marina, I have some issues. Just in the last 40 days alone, I've received 27 complaints about the services. Now, I understand about the increase in costs. I'm not here to go against that, but we do have a renewal coming up, next year?
Yes, sir.
And so these are some of the issues I would love for you guys to address by next year.
Yes, sir.
Let me start off with no mail on Wednesdays for duplexes. So these are streets that have mainly duplexes, like Spring Branch Road, for example. There's been an ongoing battle between the trash and the Postal Service since I moved to Kennedale in 2007. One of the issues is that because it's so tight where you're going to put the trash, you have to put it close to the mailboxes. But the citizens, for example, in Spring Branch, it's been a big battle to get mail on Wednesday because, yes, we might put them, or I used to live there, that's why I will say me, we might have used to put it away from our mailboxes, but then they end up in front of our mailboxes. I've seen the Postal Service come down, start on the first 3 houses, and then turn around and leave because all the trash cans were lined up on both sides in front of mailboxes all the way down.
Are you talking about our carts,
Yes.
the recycle carts? Okay.
Not just the carts, but also private trash cans as well for Wednesdays. Not just the recycling bins, but also the trash bins that are put out.
And I'm just trying to make sure I address this properly. So it's after we service,
Yes, sir.
we put the containers back in front of the mailboxes?
Yes, sir. I might put it over here in front of the mayor, but it ends up in front of my mailbox, no matter what we do. We might put it next to the mailbox, but it ends up in front of the mailbox. And in some cases, in the middle of the street. And that's not just, these duplex streets, but that's all over town. That's been a big ongoing issue, again, for over a decade, that these people who have these tight kind of properties don't get their mail on Wednesday. And that's, partially the postal office, but it seems like it's been a big battle between the two entities. I'll move on to, let's talk about all citizens get one free kind of dump a year if you show your water bill. I'm sure you can recognize this right here, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what is this? Where did I get this from?
Hard hat, road guard vest.
And so a lot of the citizens don't know that if you bring a trailer, for example, instead of a truck, you get charged. And a lot of people don't have trucks. They might have like a Bronco, for example, and a small trailer to bring their trash, but they don't get their annual one free. As a matter of fact, I think the first time I tried this in the 14 years I've lived here, it cost me $130 just to have a trailer of just some minor stuff that were from fencing or whatever it was. It wasn't a lot. Just because we didn't know. Well, lesson learned, I learned. One of the other issues is when we do go, we're being charged this helmet and this jacket for a brief moment. So everybody is required by you guys, and I assume it's for safety. I think we can agree on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. My issue with it is it seems like a money generating for you guys because Arlington doesn't require this, for example, when you go to their dump sites, but that's Arlington. That's not you guys. I get that. But when I go on top of the hill, which was my second time on top of that hill doing this experience, none of your workers were wearing helmets. So why am I required, when I'm just going on top of Mount Trashmore, opening up my trunk and throwing out my trash, why am I required to wear a safety helmet when your own workers are walking around without helmets? It makes it seem like you're money generating on there, and that's my concern with that. I'll move on to my next one. Is no process for complaints. Again, I've experienced this a long time. I had a 50-gallon trash bin, one of those hefty ones, just like your recycling bins. And the handle was kind of broken. You know, it's more of a big deal for me than it is for you guys. I watched one of your trash men literally rip it all the way down to where it was not usable for me. And when I called to complain about it, I got voicemails and no return calls for weeks. And I'm not the only one that's been complaining about that, but I'm just going to use my experience as an example. Here's my private property being destroyed by your company, and I had nobody to address my grievances except for the current city manager at that time. I would like you guys to address the process for our citizens to call and for your middle management to return their calls and address our grievances. So please look into that as well. We had a recent complaint just about 40 days ago from a neighbor right here next to the city about the big bins being picked up at 5 a.m. and being slammed down, obviously, because they are. I believe the city manager probably reached out on you guys, but I mean, this isn't your first rodeo. We shouldn't have zero complaints on that. You guys do know our rules about noise ordinances, nothing before 6. And so I mean, she was pretty upset. She chewed Darrell out pretty hard that day. So I would like you to address that as well. Another thing, please bring up that picture. I live in Brookstone, which is the largest HOA in the city. I've had several complaints the last 2 months over your recycling doing this. And I want to know why. Why is the recycling putting the trash bins in the middle of our sidewalks? Now, my neighborhood's a very active neighborhood. Even in the deep cold yesterday, our normal people who go walking were walking. And so on the days like this, on a Wednesday, they either walk in the street or they're walking in people's yards. Now, I believe the city manager addressed this when he addressed the bins before 6 a.m. with you guys, but we still, as of last week, I believe, last Wednesday, still have whole streets like this where our recycling bins are put in the sidewalk. Why? Like, why is that happening? Why can't our citizens walk themselves or their dogs on our sidewalks safely? And these are being put in the streets, so these are not recycling bins that are put on the sidewalk for pickup.
I don't understand how that's happening. We have cameras on our trucks, so I can look at the cameras and see. I mean, that would, to me, that would seem more effort.
Me too.
It doesn't make sense.
I mean, the first couple times it was funny. After 2 months, though,
Yeah.
Everybody in our neighborhood, that's mostly the complaints at the beginning of the 27.
I mean, our helpers and drivers, they have a hard job. They're working fast. That doesn't make sense. So we'll look into it.
I mean, I'll give him on precision. I mean, your recycling guys are fast and they're really good at their jobs, but this just started happening probably late November, early December.
I can't explain that. Do you mind if I get that picture?
Yeah,
So I can show my team.
Happy to send it to you guys. Thank you, Ryan. Another complaint in the same HOA, and this happened probably in the last 60 days sometimes, where maybe you guys got busy on a Wednesday. And I'm not talking about a high volume day like Christmas, ignore that, but just on a normal day, they were late getting there and whole streets were not picked up on a Wednesday. And then, of course, they call to complain, and there's either no response, or the one person that actually got through to somebody was told, oh, they're coming back, they're just emptying their truck and never came back. So can we address that? Also, again, I'm not saying on high volume days, but on normal days that we're making sure that all of our citizens are getting picked up on Wednesday, because that's usually the bigger day. I think you agree, there's a whole lot less people use Saturday than they do on Wednesday.
This is the first time I'm hearing about this. I'll make sure.
Okay, thank you so much. That's my concerns. I know this is going to be a magic wand overnight, and I appreciate you coming out and hearing our citizens' grievances and mine. I've been waiting a long time to tell you some of these stories. I just want to give you guys a good year to address some of these things. I think my biggest concern is that phone call. We should have a way to call you guys, and we should have people calling us back to alleviate this. We are your customers, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for taking that information and looking into that. So with all of
Madam Mayor,
that,
if
yes?
I may just ask, I have
Sure, of
one
course.
observation and one question. That's never happened in my street, so kudos. I think that looks more like a training issue. But to Councilmember Nevers' point around recycling brush, I know the fourth landfill has a living earth inside the landfill. Well, it's a private business. You pay a nominal fee, you go in, you can dump all your brush in their lot, they recycle it in the mulch and resell it. Is that anything, and I realize you two are just probably 2 miles from each other, so it might not make economic sense, but is that an option for the?
Absolutely.
As a citizen, we could go and either enter at a discounted rate or no rate and just say, we're here to recycle brush that's going to get resold later on, or old fences and things of that nature.
Absolutely, it's an option for us. And we can talk about different services, or we can even amend services as soon as the city wants to. We can work together on working with Living Earth. I've worked with Living Earth in other cities. I worked with them in Houston. So it just takes us all getting together and working something up with, because Living Earth will still expect a cost. There is a cost involved.
Okay, thank you.
Gotcha. And someone mentioned $1.35, but unless my math is off, the total increase was for curbside collection, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ava, I'm just reading, effective on this page, is the increase, the residential curbside collection is $11.24, and the curbside recycling is $4.50, right?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Oh, and that was without tax, is that what that is? So you still have to add tax? Okay.
Correct. And franchise fee, which is 10%.
Okay, so that's $1.35 total, okay, so that's very good. So it's $1.35 total increase?
Correct.
Okay. All right, with that being said, if there are no other discussions or conversations, I'll take a motion.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the 4% increase with Waste Connections beginning February 1st, 2024.
Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Madam Mayor, I second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? 3 against? Abstaining? Against, okay. Okay, so it's 3 in favor and 1 against. All right. Thank you, Abel.
I'll get these issues fixed. I'll work close with the city manager. We'll get them fixed.
Thank you, sir. You've always been really good with the city. I appreciate you.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Abel. We're going to move into executive session pursuant to 551.071, consultation with the city attorney pertaining to any matter in which the duty of the city attorney under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct may conflict with the Open Meetings Act, including discussion of any item posted on the agenda, legal issues regarding the Open Meetings Act. Underneath that would be an update on the investigation that was requested last month. And then pursuant to 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. And underneath that, we have removal and appointments for boards. And we will recess at 7:20.
I truly don't understand. Like I said, I'll look it up while y'all are. Somebody actually responded.
I saw you coughing.
Any more information? I'll go send it.
What?
It's stuff that I know.
So they even already know. Oh, okay, she just saying that, okay. No, she doesn't. Oh, she is, in her mind, it's a sister. Oh, my gosh. What's the date? Yes. Oh, that's so much. Sunday was great. Not yet, but Amber's trying to, everything is in, like, one day, you know, like her thoughts are this way, and then she gets there like, no, I'm not doing that, I'm doing this, and then I want to do this or this, so there's a lot of moving parts right now. So I'm just waiting to see. It is, it really, really is, but, this was, I got a little wise. Yeah, but, yeah, it's a good meeting. I could hear Rocky up here. I know.
Chief, I'll go send her this info.
But in a way, it kind of just shows that we're hiding. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Like if we were gonna hide it, we wouldn't say the main meeting. Oh, I see.
What did I say to get you set up?
So we didn't just approve 4, we just approved 5. I mean, we approved 5. I want to finish 4.
It's all good. I see the struggle.
Turn.
At least it's only $1.35, but 9% of water is a little bit.
I don't know if he got in there by accident.
Well, see, we had a pretty good debate about whether to use shadow percentages.
I couldn't believe it.
And
I was
it came
sitting.
down to, if you don't put them on, someone's gonna calculate it and they're gonna get it wrong. And that's gonna become reality. So as much as they don't wanna hear it, let's let us control the number and put it on there. Somebody will round up tonight. Or mid-quote miscalculate up tonight. Well, we can try to, if we can get that 25% down.
Well, I should have, I guess.
Well, if we're asking for 16 more
Oh,
percent, it's
I
still.
wouldn't even wear that, I thought.
16.
Yeah, I bet that guy got off the road by accident or something. Surely he wouldn't intentionally try to get around
But
that.
she said it was higher than 5. So that's 16 plus the 16 plus the 11.
I couldn't resist, I had to tell you that.
Thank you. Have a good night.
I kind of like people that don't want to. We can't afford to spin up a treatment. We can't afford to pay the licensure that it takes to have somebody sit at the plant and stare at a computer monitor. So we're just stuck. Yeah. Higgins fired up because they, from what I understand, the water department, they had more public works people that go to the park. Yeah. Now that we don't have the water department, there's not as many. 7? Yeah, that's what I looked at, around that on the budget. Yeah, 7 employees. I had to modify the budget so it wouldn't do well, it wouldn't look like we lost a ton of people. So I intentionally reduced public works, and I had to put a caveat that this is less than what was actually in the budget, but I had to pull out the water. Yeah.
Have a good evening.
charter too. Do you have an extra charter?
I do in my office. I really think that was spam of some sort, but I was like, well, I'm not 100% sure what to do with it. Yeah, I was like, this has nothing to do with animal control. But I can't remember what things on today. No, not really. Thankfully.
My school books.
Got to get on finishing mine. I went to election law seminar, and that's,
What?
election law seminar, and so it's all the clerks meeting, and so I'm like, I've got to get on there. I need to talk to the lady and see where I'm at.
Yeah, they brought us in, for the midterm elections, they brought in all the police departments to talk about security.
Wow, really?
Election, yeah, that was it was the one before Simmons. Forgot her name, commissioner. He's a lot of, common sense stuff.
Things you should know.
She had like some retired feds or something like that on the presentation. That's all they do is consult. This next election is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Anti-Trumpers are already all worked up. Got 10 more years in this business. It's so polarized. I didn't realize that you have claimed asylum status.
I get to go.
All right.
Look at you.
Oh, you never get to go. You're always here.
Till the end.
No, no.
Oh.
Sorry,
You were
guys.
supposed to make that much easier. See you later.
Have a good night. Don't have to show any travel. You know how you go to the airport, TSA, you have to show your ID and your boarding pass, ticket, whatever. And, yeah. There's a special one
There's a special line.
for people who don't have ID. Have immigrant status. I was watching it was a debate on Congress. There was one of the Republican senators from Texas up in the House. Anyway, he was bringing that up. He actually was showing pictures. Here's the Tucson airport. There's a special line. People don't have IDs. Like, how are we?
I don't even understand.
It's pretty interesting.
Well, I mean,
I didn't know that was happening. I mean, nobody knows it's happening.
yeah.
Unless
If
you
I
go to
don't
the
have an
airport.
ID, I shouldn't be able to fly.
That's what I always thought. And I tell you what, one time, Heidi, my legal name is Michael. So ticket under Mike.
Yep.
And I am not kidding. We were there for probably about 45 minutes at least, maybe longer, for them to verify who I was, go somewhere to another office somewhere, had a supervisor come talk to me. This is Spirit Airlines. Verify my information a couple times. And basically it's because she put Mike instead of Mike, because it didn't match my ID.
Wow.
Yes, they wouldn't liberty that again. But the whole point is, you know, come on.
Lesson learned.
This is, so if it in fact is accurate, then that kind of upsets me a little bit, because I've been detained.
Yeah.
When we got to the airport with plenty of time, I shouldn't have lost my flight, but I missed the flight. Still, it's like, I get my ID.
What?
I got everything you've ever asked for.
I keep getting these weird emails from people trying to book a double room.
In your city, you know?
Yeah.
Did you forward NetJeans?
I haven't, but
Yeah, they'll block them.
I'll send it.
Gotta write this stuff down.
See ya.
Did the cameras come on?
Camera's off.
I didn't want to see anybody get my notepad, so they could say, I want to see his notes. And I'm gonna destroy them.
Campaign season. Blitz season, whatever. They said they swear that they don't need to fill out the finance forms. Everything I'm reading says you have to. As a matter of fact, I'm reading something that says if you are an office holder, you have to, which would mean even the guys that haven't campaigned or just appointed would have to.
For what, to run?
Well, every 6 months they have to do a report on finances.
Like their personal finances?
Campaign.
No.
I'm just trying to figure out what I'm.
That would make sense. So when are you closing the citywide awards? Or when do you want to close them? You just send me an email of the day.
Yeah, it's because supposedly I'm not supposed to be doing it, it's supposed to be careful.
Well, the thing is,
probably for next week. Yeah, okay. Note to self.
You already shut down the department. Kind of looked at it one way. It didn't sell this issue. I think last year we were waiting like the day before.
Yeah, it was,
Still waiting.
we were the day of picking up stuff.
Trying to put that on meetings.
Yeah. I'm asking Caroline, but. Ross is out all week probably. He's got COVID.
Oh my gosh.
His wife has it and now the baby has it. Don't wait.
Yep.
Yeah, we need it finalized probably by the 24th.
I'll just say the word, it'll turn off.
She will probably tell me whatever I say is fine. Send it off to her. This one isn't. This big Saturday.
We have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
Are these place numbers, because these don't match what's on the website, so are we assuming that these are place numbers?
Yeah, those are,
Okay.
those are the place numbers as far as, well, Ross made that up. That's a new form. He may have not understood.
Okay.
That's what, that probably is something we need to address.
Yeah, because what we're trying to figure out is what the place numbers are, because we're gonna come out and make a motion. So we're making a motion for these places to be, like, place 4 to be this person, place, and the webs.
Where's the 20?
Okay.
So 20's already
Look at 20C, 23EC.
easy, okay. So, 1 is Tyson, 2 is Marcel, 3 is Beth. 4 is Daryl City, which we replaced on Canada.
And then we reduced it down.
So, that's, those numbers are correct.
Okay, but, what's his name is not, yes, but this guy's not on here, where's he at?
He's on, he's 7.
He should be on here, though, he's not.
That is Ross.
Okay.
I haven't looked at what this looks like yet. He did it just last week.
Okay. Okay, so based on
He's
this,
still
I can
7.
safely say that he is place 3.
Yes.
Okay, and that's the most important thing right now.
He is 3, and I think David is,
Each was removed.
Edie's
Clear as mud.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna be catty. I'm gonna be catty. This is why I get frustrated handing things off. Because they get so screwed. I'm not saying I'm perfect. But attention to detail is a big thing.
So you're documenting your time.
Yeah. Trying to.
Nice thing about not being civil service.
What does that mean?
Huh?
What do you mean?
When you appeal, yes. They're it's typically civil service.
I wish I understood. It's just not. I've always been who I am, so it's, I don't understand when people like this. I'm just.
Well, it's just hard when you aren't. It's fully standard and acceptable.
Yes.
I'm just like, oh, well, you have an officer, the operating shouldn't review last week. He left. But I was gonna terminate him. Be prepared. Officer leaves.
Don't remember him.
But I mean, it's, you know,
He wasn't the newer gentleman, was he?
still on probation. But it's a standard.
There's probation.
Wasn't the standard. And some other things.
Yeah. It's don't want that.
It's a pain. They do.
I was worried. I was worried we cut things off. Y'all had found something that was not okay. I'm like, oh crap. Just sitting, so. Hold everybody in the same standard you can. The moment you get down, everybody else. That's why I have to be honest. Here's all the phone, here's everything. But it's your responsibility. I was supposed to have my phone. I got it. And there, I don't know. And it could partially be because I thought the employer didn't have to do it. Because I mean, David's been here a month. But once you start, once you open, once you appoint treasurer and start, the applicants is different. Office holder. Well, they're holding. They are holding. So, as much as I hate to, I'm gonna have to call them. Clarify. Because I don't wanna get them in trouble, but see, I have to go on the web now. For 5 years back, I have to have it. Oh, no. No, he was just supposed to be doing who's on the board, what place they are on the board, and if they were absent, if present absent, or if there was no quorum. we've told you, you need to improve.
Yeah, the sergeant constantly just kept talking, talking. So, she wanted to hang. But I like it.
It's it.
Let's just get transfer calls.
That's what we want. That's who you want. That does that. So that's good. Motivation is huge. I mean, every next to someone don't get close one. So yeah, it's frustrating. You know, and it's I have both sides of it. Because I have Maddie who's a good hitter. She's doing everything. They've got deck. And it's trying to do the best. So I have a kid coach. It's just, I know she's over 18, but I don't have it. It's Maddie's class. Maddie is the one. Don't get me started. I said, I know she's not ready. And I told her, she finished 7 physical games. Then 6 weeks, she finished 7 that, so Maddie can't even transfer them because you know what? I can't. It's like, guys, do it for yourself. Her job's got it. She's working at register. I know through the holidays, they worked fairly heavily. It started tapering off, and now it's 1 night a week. Really? It's yeah, there's hope that she'll live. One more question. So Amy Cowan have submitted for KKB or Park? Both. Both. She submitted for Park, but according to her husband and her, she said, I could do both. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna probably go 1, because that's all gonna come together anyway. So, okay. All right, either 1 or both. Yeah. Put those 2 boards together, I just wish they would do it. I'm trying to teach those boards how to be on camera, go through the procedural. I mean, I literally wrote a script for Colby County. He tried. He's trying. But he's like, well, you're better at this. You should be. I'll just let you be the chair. You can't just hand that off. That is not voted on. That is the council. He's like, oh. But yeah, it's so hard to get people to want to be on boards and commissions and such. So I get frustrated because people stop that. It's like, I understand and get frustrated. But I don't know. 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 I
Now you can take it.
Now you can't say it. Get my text.
No, I was talking. Actually, what I need to do, I have made it.
The only thing we forgot to ask, we do this all in one motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, we will reconvene from executive session at 8:40. And do we have a motion or an action item from our executive session?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Brian Griffin to place 4, David Glover to place 7 on the EDC. And on the TERS, I'd like to place Jeff Navarez, place 3, David Glover, place 1, Chad Wandell, place 4. And on Parks and KKB, Amy Callan, that's right, Callan. Parks, seat 1, and KKB, seat 1.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Madam Mayor, I second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Yes. Yeah, good question. Unanimous. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
The mayor's like.
All in favor? Unanimous.